Hello, ladies. Welcome to our Tween Talk live today. And if you're here today, I'm assuming you are maybe new to homeschooling your tween, or perhaps you've been doing it for a little while and you're just not feeling like you're getting into it, or you've got the right things in place, or you're worried about your tween's education. Whatever the case, glad you're here, because by the end, I want you to know that you will have a way to figure out exactly what curriculum your tween needs to be using. Now, this seems like a huge promise. How can I promise this? Well, because it's a process, and I'm going to show you what that process is. And then you can then use that process. It's not some magical thing, but it is a way of thinking about things. We're going to do 3 different mindset shifts. And as we go through those mindset shifts, you'll see, oh, this is how I select the right curriculum for my tween. So let's dive into it. But before we do, I'm Marina Gabor. If we haven't met, hi, welcome. I would love to meet you. And I am founder of Tween Talk and also the Life Skills Club, which our meetings are Tuesday afternoons at 4 Pacific. And today we're talking about critical thinking in there. Super excited about that. If you're interested in that, go to lifeskills.club. It is for your tween to learn those foundational life skills. But what we're here for now is to help you figure out what curriculum is good for your tween. We'll go through those mindset shifts that you need and get you on your way so you can be confident that you're moving forward in the right direction for the rest of this school year. We're not that far into the school year. There's still time to course correct if you feel like you're not exactly where you want to be. All right. Let me get this over here. Perfect. So, number 1, mindset shift. We are just going to jump right in. But I will say that these mindset shifts, yes, I said that right. Try saying that 10 times fast. These mindset shifts are things that I learned over time, and I'm only able to see them as I'm looking back. I'm looking back and I see, I was doing a lot of reflecting and going, what changed? How did I have to change how I thought about things in order for me to find the best path for my tween's education? So that's where I'm sharing this from. So first of all, here is a biggie. Think about learning outcomes rather than education. Now, what does that even mean? Well, we're going to dive a little bit into some semantics, word choices. So when you think about school, you might be homeschooling. You might be going to public school. You might be going to a private school. You might be going to a Christian school, a forest school. All those have the descriptor before school. School is just where this is happening, the location. So when we're thinking about homeschool, we're just talking about your schooling at home. Then when we talk about education, that we're talking about the style. So how is information being presented? What methods are we using? What philosophies are we moving forward with? That's the education bit. That's kind of the how of it. So we have the where and we have the how. And then this other part, think about learning outcomes. So that's the what. So we need to think about the what instead of the how when we're starting out. Because some people might think, they've read lots of stuff and they're like, I don't know, am I Charlotte Mason? Am I eclectic? Am I classical? Where where do I fit? Those are all the how. Those are all like the educational philosophies, how you're presenting, how you're doing, um, how you're getting to the learning outcomes. But if we don't know what the learning outcomes are, we don't know the best way to achieve them. So, step one is instead of worrying about are you Charlotte Mason, classical, or eclectic, and I'm just choosing those three randomly, you might be any other number of styles. Instead of thinking which philosophy, educational philosophy, you belong to, or you want to label yourself as, take a step back and think, where do I want my tween to be by the time they graduate? And not just where do I want them to be, because remember, they are spreading their wings, they're gaining some independence, and yes, you are ultimately responsible for this trajectory of their education, but they need to also buy in. They're the ones doing the work. This isn't you doing projects for them. This is them doing the learning. So, what does that look like for your child as far as learning outcomes go? For example, when thinking about a learning outcome versus the education, I might say, oh, we're doing Saxon math. So that is a certain math curriculum that uses a certain methodology. But what is the learning outcome? Why are you using that program? So if we look over here to the learning outcomes and we say, you know what? My son wants to be a physicist. Okay. So with that end goal in mind, you can then look at this education, if you will. What style of learning, what rigor of learning, like a rigorous course of studies do you need to achieve that outcome? And then, of course, you break it down even further. Okay, they want to be that. So, what mathematical concepts do they have to know? So, we're thinking about not just, oh, I'm homeschooling. Okay, great. So, that's where the learning's taking place. And we're not just thinking, we're doing classical education. Okay, that's how, but what? Let's start with what and take the pressure off for the how and even for the where, because there might be different options for different learning outcomes. All right, mindset shift number 2. Okay, this is a thing that I don't know that I've ever said this because I really honestly don't feel that kids are behind. But I know and I have heard in multiple groups and multiple parents say, I'm so worried my kid is going to be behind. And my question always is, behind what? Behind whom? And does it matter? Now, sometimes it might, and sometimes you have reason for concern, but a lot of times it is you've pulled them out of a certain schooling system and you want to do this other schooling system, but you are still judging your child, measuring their progress against that first system that you pulled them out of in the first place. So let's redefine so we can see this whole concept of being behind. So we can see, is your tween actually behind? Or do you just need to confidently be able to move forward because you have a clear goal in mind? So behind means that there is some path with milestones, or that your tween has not hit certain milestones at an expected date and time. That's behind. There is the milestone, they aren't there at the time. So there's maybe a couple times when this matters, and I'm not saying that when you're home educating, homeschooling, that it is wishy-washy. You should never have any timelines. You for sure should. Otherwise, your kids will not be motivated. They will languish. Everything will just kind of spiral down and it will not be good. So we do have to have some timelines, schedules. However, remember we said the kid that wanted to be a physicist? And then we might say, okay, well, then they have to know all of this math. All right. Well, learning all of that math is going to take a certain amount of time. And if they wanted to pursue higher schooling and go to college or university, because that's what they would need to do in order to achieve their next goal, then we need to help them complete all of these math learning outcomes in time for them to take the next step to university at the age they want to start university. So it's still kind of arbitrary. Like, who said they have to start university when they're 18 or 19? That's a choice. But if you make that choice, that's fine. And then you have to get all of these things done, using math as an example. So then you could work it backwards and say, all right, so here we are in 6th grade. So I have 6 years for me to help my tween and then teen get through all of these math concepts so that they're able to keep going and achieve their goal of being a physicist. Okay, so then they get going on that. And by the time they are the equivalent of 8th grade age, they should be over here in order to complete that course of studies and all of those learning outcomes by here. So if instead of being here, they're back here, they would be behind. They're behind in order, the timeline that would require them to complete this work in order to do the thing they wanted to do when they're 18 or 19. But it's a timeline that they've got for themselves. Now, sometimes it might be legitimate, like my student, they don't have high math goals, but they're really, really struggling with basic concepts. And I feel like they're behind where peers of the same, that have the same goals, like just learning basic math, and that have average intelligence for learning basic math, they're having trouble learning those concepts. So at that point, you might say, okay, so my kid isn't grouped in this group of everybody who learns these basic math concepts at this point by this age. So you might feel like they're behind. But still, then we go, what is the goal for my tween? Is it in there? Are they capable of learning this set of learning outcomes? And then you can assess from there. I hope that that's helpful and gives you a little bit of a mindset shift when you're thinking about, oh my goodness, my kid should be at this point. Then just think, why do they need to be at that point? And then that might help you shift some perspective. Okay, mindset shift number 3. The curriculum you choose should help your tween reach their learning outcome, which means that you have to have created these learning outcomes. Now, here's the thing. You might say, my tween is in the public school system, or they are doing the public school curriculum at home, and there is a prescribed course of studies with a clear set of learning outcomes, and that is what we are following. So if that is the case, then you know exactly what curriculum you need to use, because there's the learning outcomes. Now, which curriculum matches your child's learning style and helps you meet those learning outcomes? And it could be that you are using some from this curriculum and some from this curriculum, and you're pulling from different curriculum, and you're achieving all the learning outcomes, but you are pulling from different resources. If they are in a public system with a prescribed set of learning outcomes, they might also say, and you have to use this curriculum to achieve this outcome. And then your hands are tied, which is why maybe you are homeschooling, because you're like, well, some of these learning outcomes are fine, but I don't want my kid to have to use that curriculum. Maybe they need it modified. Maybe they need it more difficult. Maybe they need it over a longer time frame. Whatever the case, it always starts with what are the learning outcomes, and then we can match the curriculum. And sometimes it takes a little bit of trial and error. I wish it didn't, because that sometimes gets expensive. Total transparency, we have purchased curriculum that then after we got it, we looked at it, and I thought, this looks like this is going to help us achieve our learning outcomes. And we got going with it, and it was like, this is not a good fit for my tween. They can't learn like this. They don't learn well like this. So that's where, remember, we talked about education being that philosophy or style of learning. That will also help us choose our curriculum. So if we have our outcomes, we know what they need to learn. Okay, we need to achieve these things. And then in the early years, we did a lot of Charlotte Mason kind of thing. We dabbled in classical conversations for some of that grammar writing area, and IEW, which was much more classical. And then for other things, I was like, it looks like we might be kind of eclectic in that we are choosing from different styles depending on the learning outcomes we're looking at, and depending on my daughter's strength in each of those areas. So sometimes you might need a different style or learning philosophy. Oh, looks like my cat needs to get out. We know who rules the house, right? If you have a cat, it's probably the cat. So you might decide, I don't want as rigorous a Spanish course as would be kind of dictated by this learning philosophy. So I'm going to use something else. It's still going to help me achieve my learning outcomes, but it's going to do it in a way that is a better fit for my child. So when we're thinking about choosing that perfect curriculum for your tween, this is how you do it. And you can move forward confidently knowing that you've chosen the right curriculum because it's going to help them get that learning outcome that is going to be one of the building blocks to that ultimate goal they have by the time they graduate. So you do have to do a little bit of long-range thinking. Where do we want to end up? Where are we right now? What are all the things we need to learn to get there? And then decide which is the best kind of school option, like location. What is the best philosophy? And then what is the curriculum that I can use to help teach my child that learning outcome? So if you don't finish a complete curriculum, that's okay. We're looking at what are all the learning outcomes. Maybe you just needed it for one section and then you're using something else for another section. That's okay too. I hope this has given you a little bit of clarity, direction, comfort, confidence that you can choose the right curriculum for your tween, that you can choose the right educational path, and that these mindset shifts have been helpful. So again, learning outcomes rather than education. They're probably not behind, but you need to figure out what is your timeline. Where do you want to end up? Where are you now? And then you can make some goalposts along the way. And finally, make sure that they're not just doing busy work. They don't have to do hours and hours and hours of schoolwork just to fill the time. It's a lifestyle choice. So make whatever it is that they're doing relate directly to the learning outcome. They'll be more invested and you'll be more confident knowing that they're going to get to that higher goal, that future end goal, because you are meeting those learning outcomes along the way. Now, if you are still like, I'm not sure, this is still kind of tricky, I'm still not totally clear, or I thought it was clear and then we got started and this is troublesome, I need somebody to bounce some ideas off of. I am 100% here to help you out. So feel free to book a call with me, 15-minute clarity call. We'll talk about where your tween is at, where they're going, and you'll leave that call with some clarity as to what your next steps are. I hope this live has been helpful, and I hope you have an amazing rest of your week as you start thinking about where is your tween going? What are those learning outcomes? And how can you help your tween achieve those along their journey?